Hey, welcome to the Graced Health Podcast. Today we are digging into creatine. When my older son was probably sophomore-ish in high school, and he is now a senior in college, so about 6 years ago, he came to me asking about creatine. He was working out. He was a high school athlete in basketball. Of course, he was concerned about growing his muscles and getting stronger, not only to support his basketball, because also he wanted to, look good. And I had remembered learning about creatine in my certified nutrition coaching information through NASM. And I said, well, I tell you what, I said, let's go to see what they talk about in the nutrition coaching, like the official stuff from NASM. If I'm totally honest, I went thinking that it was going to be able to dissuade him. I went in looking for that information because I'll be honest, I didn't remember learning it, but I went with the intent of thinking, okay, hopefully this will tell me that no, it's not very good and you shouldn't take it. I logged in, pulled up the online manual, and was surprised to actually see a positive report from that. And basically where it came out saying, yeah, it's generally safe. There wasn't a lot of information in there, but what I read gave me some comfort with him taking it, because let's be honest, 16-year-olds, they're going to do what they want to do. They're not necessarily going to actually do what mom wants them to do. So I was glad knowing that he was probably going to take it anyway. I was glad to know that it was safe. Now, just to put things in perspective, I am currently 51 years old, and I had this memory in 1998 of Mark McGwire having this amazing year, and then all of a sudden he was under scrutiny because a reporter had seen a couple different bottles of some different things in his locker. One of the bottles that the reporter saw was the shortened word is andro. I'm not even going to try and pronounce it. I'm so sorry. But that's basically like a testosterone boosting pill. And then the other thing was creatine. Both of these were legal in baseball at the time. The problem is we pick up these words, and andro and creatine and steroids all got lumped together, and it kind of just circled around. And for the general public, like myself, I was like, oh, all of these are bad. All of these are not good for you, et cetera, et cetera. So creatine was actually kind of like the innocent bystander in a lot of this. And I won't go into all of that. I'm not fully versed or educated on what all happened with that. But in my mind, what I went to was creatine, Mark McGwire, not a good thing. But not only is my memory not fully formed of that event, we also know so much more about creatine. This is one of the questions I get so often from women in my community, whether it's through coaching or friends or people replying is like, what do we do? What's the deal with creatine? Because you're hearing a lot about it. I wanted to take this episode to talk about that. And just like I've talked about on previous episodes, I think it's very important that we choose who we trust and choose who we listen to. I've used the example before that if you are walking into a happy hour or a big event, there are a lot of voices in the room, but then when you see that one person you trust, you feel safe with, that's the person that you're going to listen to. And I have learned primarily about creatine from two people. One of them is Dr. Stacy Sims, who has her PhD in environmental exercise physiology and sports nutrition, and Dr. Lane Norton, who has his PhD in nutritional sciences. I've talked about Dr. Sims a lot on this podcast because she does a lot of work in women our age. Dr. Lane Norton, I trust as well. He has a broader scope of people he is trying to serve, and not all of his work is applicable to our audience. However, that doesn't mean that the education he provides isn't applicable. So those are the two people who I really did the most research from with, what's the right word? I don't know. But I researched primarily with Dr. Stacy Sims and Dr. Lane Norton because I trust them. I value their ability to read and report on research in unbiased ways. They will simply bring how it is, and I will provide all of the research in the show notes. This is what you'll find in today's episode. Number one, we'll talk about what creatine is. We'll talk about natural food sources of it, misconceptions that it has, the two main benefits of of creatine both physically and cognitively, why it matters in women in our age group, my relationship with it, do I take it, do I not, and the dosage. So let's dig in. Number one, what is creatine? So creatine is actually a naturally occurring compound. It's not something that's made up. It's not a steroid. Repeat, not a steroid. It is not invented by the supplement industry. It is something that our body synthesizes in the liver, the pancreas, the kidney from 3 amino acids, glycine, arginine, and methionine. It's primarily stored in our skeletal muscle. And so I want you to think about it as something that your body already knows and it uses, like it knows what to do with this, and supplementing just gives it a little bit more. When it is stored in the muscles, it is stored as phosphocreatine. And during intense effort, like sprinting or lifting or jumping, the phosphocreatine helps regenerate the ATP, which is that cell's primary energy currency. Phosphocreatine helps regenerate ATP, and ATP is the cell's primary energy currency. So this is what it goes to for very quick, very short bursts. We're going to talk more about ATP in depth. So hang tight. We'll get back there. As I said, creatine is found naturally in the food we eat. The best natural sources are animal products. So that's going to be like your red meat, like your beef, your bison, your lamb. Those have about 1 to 2 grams per pound of raw meat. It is in your fatty fish like herring, salmon, and tuna. For example, herring has up to 1.5 to 2 grams per pound of fish. In your poultry, like your chicken and turkey, it's going to be lower, but it still has it. So that is about 0.7 to 1 gram of creatine per raw pound of meat, because when you cook it, it does change it a little bit. Cooking does reduce that creatine. If you eat a primarily plant-based diet, then number one, that is great. Of course, lots of plants equal very good things for us, but the dietary creatine is going to be limited. And so this conversation about creatine as a supplement may be helpful to you. The general dosage for creatine is between 3 and 5 grams a day. And I'm going to talk about that more later, but I'll be talking about this 3 to 5 grams as we go along. And if you are a math person, then chances are you're sitting here thinking, how in the world am I going to get enough creatine in my diet? Because even if I'm eating red meat that's on the upper amount of the creatine, that just say it's 2 grams of pound per raw meat, first I cook it, and then 2 grams for 1 pound, and I need to have at least 3 grams a day. That's 3 pounds of meat. That's a lot of meat. My guess is very few of us watching and listening are eating that kind of meat. And I will talk about this here in just a little bit, because when we start doing that math, it is kind of unrealistic to think that we are going to reach 5 grams of creatine a day from food alone. And this is where I want to stop. And if you are if you're multitasking, if you're just listening to me with half an ear and you're just kind of wanting to know the basics about this creatine, come back to me really quickly, because I want you to hear this. Creatine does come in natural sources. The general context that we are discussing here is creatine as a supplement. And as we have discussed, supplements are here to supplement what we eat. My hope is that we have those foundations in first before we start supplementing. So when people start asking me about supplements, I'm like, okay, well, let's take this down. What's your foundation? And if you're like, I don't know what these things are, then go back and listen to my episode called The 10 Things That Actually Move the Needle from September 9th, 2025. And this is like the foundation of the things that we want to have before we start supplementing too much. So get that foundation solid first before you go add in a bunch of supplements, including creatine. So please hear that. Get your foundation right first before you start playing around with too many supplements. As I was putting together this episode and I started thinking, I was like, okay, but this doesn't make sense to me, because I like to kind of pull back and have a common sense approach. Man has existed for a very long time without creatine supplement. So why do we say that we need to have between 3 and 5 grams when we're also saying it's difficult to consume that much? And we have existed a really long time without creatine supplements. That gap was just not sitting well with me. So again, more research. And basically, the 3 to 5 grams is not a survival requirement. You do not need to have 3 to 5 grams of creatine to survive. This is more of a performance or a therapeutic ceiling of something that can help you. Again, this is a supplement. So 3 to 5 grams does not mean that if you do not get there, you will not survive or you're going to be deficient. It does mean that there might be a little bit of gap if you are not consuming that much and you feel like there might be some opportunity to have it. And I'll tell you about those benefits here in a second. Our human bodies were never designed to get 5 grams a day from food. Humans have been fine. It is important to remember that those hunter-gatherer diets were actually pretty creatine rich. They ate the organ meats, they ate the liver. I don't eat the liver. Do you? Maybe you do, but I don't. They ate whole animals. They ate a lot of fish. So their baseline stores were probably reasonably healthy. We have not been a creatine depleted species forever. We're just realizing that there is some optimization, and I kind of hate using that word because it's so overused, but there is an opportunity for us to have our muscles and our cognitive benefits working a little bit better. And of course, that was hunter-gatherer. Our modern diets tend to trend lighter on red meat and organ meat. Again, no thank you to the liver. We are eating more plant-based, plant-heavy, very good, very, highly suggested. That's more common. And creatine is harder to find in vegetarian and vegan-based diets. We are living longer and we are asking more of our bodies as we get older. And we also know more about our changing seasons, including women in perimenopause and menopause. We are in a specific physiological window where that baseline of what we might have without the supplementation may not be enough to offset what the estrogen decline is doing to our muscle and brain. So some of this is just coming out of science and research. And along those lines, just so you know, creatine is one of the most widely studied and well-supported supplements we have, especially when it comes to strength, muscle, and performance. Creatine has hundreds, arguably thousands of studies behind it. It's been researched for strength and muscle mass, exercise performance, brain health and cognition, and aging and muscle preservation. And it has a very strong safety profile in healthy individuals. So we're learning more, we're studying more, and now we have this information that we get to choose what we do with it within our body. Before I step into the benefits of creatine, I want to talk some about the misconceptions. One is that creatine is just for bodybuilders and men. Not true. This is just decades of misunderstanding. The science no longer supports this. Dr. Stacy Sims actually says it's one of the most important supplements for women, especially in perimenopause and menopause. So it is not just for the guys out there. Another misconception, number 2, is creatine will make you bulky. It does not add fat to you. It will not cause you to grow adipose. It also will not cause you to grow muscle fibers overnight. You might see a little bit of a change on a scale, maybe around a pound, and that's just from intracellular water in your muscle. So it's just your muscles are holding onto more water. It's not fat. It's usually just temporary, and it's not generally the puffy kind of water retention. So, sometimes if you go on vacation and you're having a whole lot of salt or whatever, and you're holding on to water, I'm pointing at my face. If you can see me on YouTube, I'm just pointing at my face because this is what happens to us, or at least it happens to me as I get all puffy on vacation. This is not that same type of puffiness. It's normally just within your muscles. Another misconception is that it causes bloating. So kind of along those same lines, if you supplement with that 3 to 5 grams a day, bloating is not as common. It can happen if you are taking large, what's called loading doses, or using low quality products. So your solution to that, if it does make you bloated, is just to reduce your supplementation, again, if that's something that you choose to do. Another misconception is it damages your kidneys. The decades of research say that there is no evidence of kidney damage in healthy individuals, healthy individuals, I'm saying that again, at recommended doses. And I'll say that again, healthy individuals at recommended doses. Make sure you do not go crazy. If some is good, more is not necessarily better. If you do have a pre-existing kidney disease, please consult your doctor first. If you have blood pressure issues that are related to your kidneys, please consult your doctor first. So be wise about your own body. Use your God-given discernment for this. Be aware that when you have blood work, your creatinine levels, if you have blood work, may be elevated. And that's something to let your physician know. If they pull it out and they're like, whoa, this is kind of weird, say, well, I've been taking creatine. The other misconception is that creatine causes hair loss. There's no evidence of this in women. It originated in a single, like one small study in men that didn't directly measure hair loss, and it hasn't been replicated. And again, we're talking, there's like hundreds, if not thousands of research studies out there. So I think it's fair to say like, okay, there's that, but that we're not seeing that consistently among all of the papers. Dr. Norton says that the evidence just does not support this claim. So those are the misconceptions. Now let's talk about the two different benefits of it. The first is muscular, and this is specifically on ATP. So I'm going to try and break this down as best I can. Your body runs on ATP. This is your body's energy currency. So if you want to think about it as like dollars, this is what your body spends. Every time you move, every time you lift something, get up off the floor, even think, because it does affect our brain, then your body is using that ATP to do that. When your body uses that ATP, it basically spins it. So it kind of loses a piece of itself and it turns into something called ADP, which means that it just needs to be recharged before you can use it again. So the question becomes, how fast can your body recharge that energy? Your body's ability to recharge that energy determines how strong you feel, how quickly you fatigue, and how well your muscles perform. So the easiest way to think about this is like a rechargeable battery. ATP is a fully charged battery. When you use the energy, the battery drains, it becomes ADP, and creatine acts like a rapid charger. So it's that like super fast charger that you can get, that you can plug your phone into. It helps your body recharge that battery quickly so you can keep producing the strong, high quality effort instead of fading out. This is one reason you are hearing the creatine conversation so much for women in perimenopause and menopause, because as we move through these seasons in perimenopause and menopause, we naturally start to lose some of our muscle and our power. And so things can feel a little heavier. We can move a little slower. It just takes our brain a minute, which we'll talk about brain in a second. And anything that helps you restore your energy faster is going to support your strength. It's going to support your performance and just help you feel more capable in your body. It works in tandem with what you are doing and with the demands you are putting on your body. It is not a magic wand. It is not something that just take the creatine and it's fine. You're never going to lose any muscle. You're going to move fast. It works in tandem with what you are doing. But that's why creatine is getting so much attention and why you are hearing that, because our energy stores are decreasing at a faster rate than they used to. And this is something that can help this. Our estrogen has been quietly supporting our muscle health for decades, and now that's declining. So creatine comes in, helps support that muscle mass, our bone health, our recovery, and our training during this time of hormonal change. The bonus also with creatine is bone remodeling. So keeping those bones strong requires ATP. When you have creatine paired with lifting, that is helping develop your bone structure. So if you want to learn more about this, then I recommend 2 episodes to you. One is the bone battle no one is talking about. That came in season 23, episode 9, and it came out on March 18th, 2025. I talk a lot about bone prevention as it relates to strength training. And the other episode is, what does heavy lifting mean? That was season 24, episode 2, that came out in August 12th, 2025. And if you watch me on YouTube, there's a good chance that you watched that video and that's why you're here, because that's the video that totally went bananas for me. I'm going to stop here and tell you that when I started learning about creatine, and particularly what it does with ATP, I decided I didn't really need this. This is before the perimenopause part of the conversation was layered on. I was just looking at it from the muscle perspective, because ATP, when you are working out, is what is used when you have very short, quick bursts of energy. So think about the baseball players, going back up to Mark McGwire, the running from home to first base. So those very short bursts. Maybe it is when you are doing your max strength, which I talk about in that video, What Does Heavy Lifting Mean? So when you're pushing out like 1 to 3 reps or 2 to 6 reps, very short bursts of intense movement, that is when we tap into our ATP system. The other two systems are the oxidative system, which is more of your aerobic, like a steady state. And then there's the glycolytic system, that's also known as the anaerobic system. And so that's going to be more like from 10 seconds to 2 minutes. So that's when you're really kicking things up, but not as fast as those super, super high intensity 4 to 6 seconds. When I first learned about this, I was like, I don't really access that ATP system very much, so this doesn't apply to me, therefore I'm not going to take it. Then I learned about the second benefit, which is the cognitive benefit. So this is the one that we have been getting more studies about over in the last few years. ATP isn't just for your muscles, it's also for your brain. Our brain uses a lot of energy, including some from the ATP system. Midlife causes us to have some more brain fog. If you have walked through this, you know. So that is the like waking it up. Like for me, it's just more of things are just like moving through sludge and I can't quite connect the dots. It takes me a little bit of time. Maybe you're losing words. I just went on a girls' trip and I can't tell you how many times we were talking and we're like, I lost the word. What's the word? And it just kind of became a joke. This is super normal, just mental sharpness, feeling off. This actually does happen. The creatine research is showing that users of creatine will have significantly better performance on cognitive tasks. Intelligence scores and working memory can significantly improve after 6 weeks of supplementing. So that means, you need to have your consistency. This isn't just like one and done. You may have improvements in attention time, processing speed, memory, and this is the other thing that's pretty cool to me, is it may improve symptoms of depression and anxiety. There was a really interesting study that showed that women with major depressive disorder who added 5 grams of creatine a day to their standard antidepressant treatment, so if they were already on medication for their depression, that plus the creatine, that saw really meaningful improvements. So that helped with their depression. This is not a replacement for treatment. This is not a replacement for medication if you need that, or for therapy if that is something that you are able to do. It's just a window into how our brain energy metabolism connects to mood. If you are experiencing depression and you are under the care of a physician and you are currently taking medication, it may be worth talking to that physician about including creatine as part of your treatment plan. Again, not in place of, but just as part of it. One thing Dr. Norton reported is that the cognitive benefits were most pronounced when a deficit is present. So, terrible night's sleep, sleep deprivation, high stress. Then when you supplement with that creatine, you'll actually get better benefits from that, which is kind of interesting. And of course, how many of us are having high stress? How many of us are having sleep deprivation from just hormonal changes or whatever? So that can actually really help support that. Creatine may help buffer those bad nights or those high stress times. The other element being researched right now is the neuroprotective angles. Increased ATP availability in your brain cells may actually protect against the oxidative stress and may support long-term brain function. So that's something to keep an eye on and to keep learning about as we go through this is, can this help my cognitive later on in life as well? If so, that's super exciting. We talked some about this earlier, but I want to just park here for just a minute about why you are hearing about creatine so much for this stage, for perimenopause, for menopause. Dr. Sims says that women naturally have 70 to 80% lower creatine stores than men, And we typically consume less dietary creatine. We often just consume less in general. And so our stores are being pulled down. So we're already kind of starting from a lower place even before perimenopause begins. And then add in this season of life where it's harder to build and maintain muscle. Our bones are at greater risk. We're having brain fog. We're having mood shifts. And that deficit keeps growing. Remember, we're still kind of talking about optimization at this point. We're not saying that if you do not have this amount, that that's going to be a problem. It's just saying like, hey, here's something that can help feel better with something that your body already uses and already knows what to do with. When you add in creatine as a supplement, then you can start to have some benefits kind of stack up for women in perimenopause and menopause. You might have better quality training and faster recovery, which allows us to have more muscle building when our hormones are kind of working against us. It will help support your bone health when you are also strength training. Yes, the personal trainer wants you strength training, by the way. It will help you with your brain energy and mental clarity. And possibly if you are having depression, it may help support that. And remember, this is not a magic pill. This is not like, okay, we can take this and everything else will work. No, you've got to do this alongside training and sleep and nutrition and just overall stewarding your body well. This is not in place of, it is a supplement. I know. Okay. All right. What are the side effects? Let's move into this section. In general, it is well tolerated by most people at those recommended doses. Side effects are generally mild. They are generally avoidable. Most reported side effects are linked to what's called loading doses. And so loading doses is like you want to get your stores up really quickly. And so you'll take like 20 grams for a certain amount of time. I'm not even going to tell you about it because I don't know about it. And it's not something that I recommend for this. If you want to learn more about it, go do your own research. Also, side effects can be from low quality products. So, you want to make sure that you get third party tested. And we'll talk here in a minute about what the recommended products are. One common complaint is that people will see an increase in the scale. And that is why it's important to remember that the scale is but one tool for us to guide everything. It just measures the gravitational pull of your body against the earth. And if your muscles store extra water, then there will be more weight in you, more mass in you to pull. And so the scale will go up. So don't freak out. If your scale goes up a pound or two and you're using creatine, it doesn't really mean anything. It just means your muscles are storing the water. Other discomfort is GI discomfort or bloating. This is less common at 3 to 5 grams a day. More common with large doses, but if you still do get some GI issues, then you can split your dose up into 2 smaller amounts. And what I would say is do like 1.5 grams in the morning, 1.5 grams in the evening. I mean, start small and then add in. Also taking with food will help it. And also make sure that you are using a high quality product. We'll talk about that more in just a second. Other side effects include elevated creatinine in your blood work. So just be aware of that, because if your blood panels come back and your creatinine is higher, your doctor or you may be like, whoa, what's going on here? And just, I think in general, telling them like, oh, I'm taking creatine, that's probably going to help them understand your blood work. Creatinine is just a byproduct of your creatine metabolism. So supplementing with creatine will raise this marker. Elevated creatinine does not mean kidney damage in healthy individuals, and decades of research show no evidence of kidney harm at recommended doses in healthy people. So if your provider or if your doctor flags the creatinine levels, just let them know you're supplementing with it. It's a known and expected, side effect, if you want to call it that. And if you have pre-existing kidney disease, then please, please, please talk to your doctor before starting this. All supplements are not for all people. You need to know your own body and you need to respect what your body needs and what it doesn't need. Finally, there are some groups of people who should use extra caution. Number one, anyone with a pre-existing kidney condition, that should not surprise you. Anyone on medications that can affect kidney function, also talk to your doctor. Women who are pregnant or breastfeeding, there's just not enough research on that. So consult your provider, see what your OB-GYN wants you to do. But the bottom line is, for most women, side effects are minor, it's manageable, and often avoidable with the right product and the right dose. I told you I would talk about my relationship with creatine, and you can probably put the pieces of the puzzle together. But when I first started learning about it, I did not take it. I just thought I don't need it, because if it is ATP, I'm not working out that way. I was working out more using my glycogenic energy system or oxidative. And I just thought, I'm not really using ATP. I don't really need it. And so I didn't want to do that. Since then, I actually have changed how I lift weights more, and I do more of what's called max strength. So again, that's something I talk about in that What Does Heavy Lifting Mean episode. You can check that out. But I will have those intense bursts of strength training so that extra ATP would be helpful. I really started taking it when I started understanding the cognitive benefits more. And when I have those nights where I don't sleep particularly well, I do notice that, oh yeah, the creatine really does kind of help me feel a little more clear and help me feel a little more sharp with that. I use the Momentous brand of creatine. That's where I get a lot of my supplements. I've talked about Momentous before. It's just livemomentos.com. I have no affiliation with them. I don't get any kind of kickbacks, which I know is really unusual, but I'm not big enough for them to pay me any attention. But that is the brand that I like. It is what I trust. And I will also tell you, and just be totally forthright, that I have not been as consistent as I have even suggested being here, which is that 3 to 5 grams a day per day with consistency, because this year I have traveled, I think, more than I've ever traveled. And when I travel, I don't know why, but it feels more complicated to like take a powder with me and do all of that. I'm off my game. And so I just don't bother with it. So since I've been traveling a lot this year, I haven't really been taking it as much this year. And I will say there are some days that I don't sleep well and I wake up and I'm like, I need to take my creatine, which I know is somewhat contradictory to what I'm saying earlier about that you need to have like consistency, but that's just the honest truth of where I'm coming in. Let's talk about dosage. This really doesn't need to be that complicated. What you're wanting is 3 to 5 grams of creatine monohydrate. Okay, I'm going to stop. So if you're half listening, come back to me. Creatine monohydrate every day, 3 to 5 grams. That's your headline. If you want to supplement with creatine, get the creatine monohydrate. Don't look at any of the other marketing stuff. Don't look at the labels. Just get creatine monohydrate. It's 3 to 5 grams. If you do that every day, then you should fully saturate your muscle creatine stores within about 3 to 4 weeks at this dose. You don't need to load that up, not necessary. We don't need to go crazy with this. Timing really doesn't even matter. It just is if you're consistent or not. So pick a time in the morning, in the evening. It doesn't impact your sleep. It really doesn't have any other impacts. Just pick a time that you will remember it, or, if you want to do it when you're having a meal. But again, the creatine monohydrate is really what is best. That is what the research has been done on. The other stuff, I've looked at my local grocery store, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the marketing on some of this stuff is just crazy. And really, they're just trying to get you to pay more for an inferior product. Stick with creatine monohydrate, preferably in a powder form. Dr. Sims recommends that. She just said the bioavailability and the processing concerns with like gummies and all of that kind of stuff. And look, I get it. I mean, if you're taking a lot of supplements and stuff, like that's a lot of pills to take every day. But we're not talking about pill. We're talking about like get the powder, put it in, a shake or whatever you're drinking, stir it up and take it. I will tell you that the granules can be kind of heavy. And so you want to just stir and take it. I've talked in the past about the Fiber GDX supplement from the Pause Life, which I do really like. And so that's one that I say you got to chug it. Otherwise, you're going to be chewing it because it kind of solidifies and stuff. And so if you take that, or if you take something else, just put the creatine in it and just take it with it. So to sum up, creatine is a naturally occurring compound. Your body already makes it. It's in red meat, fish, poultry. It's very hard to get to what's called therapeutic amounts through food, but it does not mean that you need that 3 to 5 grams to survive. Creatine gives you two primary benefits that we know of right now. One of them is muscular benefit. It helps your body regenerate that ATP faster, which will give you better training quality, more strength over time, more bone health support when you are lifting. The second one is cognitive benefit. So it will fuel the brain. It can improve your memory processing and speed. It might even help your mood. Talk to your physician if you are on antidepressants. And it can be especially meaningful for perimenopausal women who are dealing with brain fog and hormonal shifts. If you decide that this is something that you want to do, just start with 3 to 5 grams of creatine monohydrate a day. Break that up if you want to avoid gut discomfort or anything like that. And just try to stay consistent with it. And remember, creatine is one of the most researched supplements in existence. It is getting a lot of attention because it has so much research behind it. And specifically, it is showing that it can really help us in this midlife transition. As with all supplements, it is a personal choice. And if you decide that you do not want to take it, totally fine. Again, it does not mean that you cannot survive without supplementation. It's just going to give you that little extra bump. And keep in mind, you still want to have those foundations. Go back and listen to that episode if you have not listened to it. But you want to have your foundation set before you start doing anything else. I know the conversation about supplements can get very overwhelming. I feel like the wellness industry is in its supplement era. And I hope that this helps kind of bring some clarity to creatine in general. I think it's very safe if it's something that you want to use within the constraints of the recommended dosage, that 3 to 5 grams of creatine monohydrate, then I say go for it. Okay, that is all for today. Go out there and have a great day.